Hi everyone, welcome back to Heartland Mamas. I'm Marie Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, and we're coming to you from our two socially distant, separate studios at the edge of the Great Red Divide. The edge of the Great Red Divide is from Illinois to California, with all that vast redness in between. And Marie and I are here to bring the message of the Democratic Party and progressivism across the chasm because I think it's largely misunderstood. I think people want to play teams, we're this team or that team, when really the Democrats really are just about the people. They're about building the 90% of us up, while the 10% of others are holding us down. So today, Marie, along that thread, I want to invite people to come and visit us at heartlandmamas.com for all our previous work, and find us on all podcast and streaming platforms, YouTube, and of course on the proudly carried by the Demcast network. Marie, today, along that vein, we're going to talk about building the platform for the Democratic Party. The convention is on the 17th of August. We know we're going to have Joe Biden. We don't know the VP, and it really doesn't matter who the VP is because we're not voting for Orange Caligula again. And we want to save our democracy, the soul of this country. But it's important to know the platform that our standard bearer, Joe Biden, is going to be standing on. So let's go through it.
And remember something about the platform. The platform is established for the presidency, but that also sets the tone and the expectations for all of those down ballot ticket candidates.
Right.
So from your senator to your state
dog
representative.
Catcher.
So there is a carryover from there to your local politics.
Right.
And what I want to say as we go into this, I want to talk just briefly about the last, Heidi and I, we did a show on the last platform, DNC Platform, when
Right.
Hillary Clinton was running. And as a woman running, women were not mentioned in that platform until page 17.
Right.
And then not American women with the right to equality, to the ERA, to autonomy over their body, until page 31.
That's right.
So that kind of prompted Heidi and I to decide to do this show and say what we think the priorities should be. As Heidi mentioned in our pre-show, women are a
super majority. There are more of us in this country than there are of men. And by a good percentage, we're 2 to 3% higher in numbers than men. And reading Hillary's platform and where women fell into that, you can tell it was written by a man. Sorry, true. So we want to make sure that our voices are heard. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I think, and that's why it's so important that we place. These are the priorities we think,
right,
that will help the Democratic Party, that would help people at every level. Because Heidi and I are mamas, we've been in politics, but we're outside the bubble. So hey, pay attention, DNC.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start domestically first. And the very first thing we need to do domestically is to establish a national pandemic plan, national COVID response plan, and deeper, establish processes and procedures in the event that this happens again.
Exactly.
So I mean, that is, I think, something that needs to be at the top.
The United States taking their hand off the tiller of infectious disease has allowed this to proliferate around the world. It has crashed economies around the world. It has killed 150,000 Americans. We are on track right now to reach up to 500,000 deaths in the United States by Christmas time. I read that just a few days ago. It was a statistic that came out. They thought 200,000. Then they revised it. They revised it up because we don't have a cohesive plan. How the United States reacts to this guides the rest of the world. And we're just like, well, we can't deal with this fake thing. That's what our current president does. So we need to make sure that when Biden steps into that Oval Office, January 20th, 2021, that he picks up the reins and he says, whoa, to the coronavirus. Sorry, Marie, I used a horse, a horse thing. But It's so important that we have a cohesive plan, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot do this again. We learned this lesson in the Spanish flu 100 years ago, and somehow Trump didn't do that history lesson. And here we are.
And you know something that as hideous as the last 4 years have been.
Yeah.
Oh my God. As nightmarish.
Yes.
As the COVID response has been.
Right.
As absolutely horrible as this has impacted everyone, one thing I can say is that this really brought to the forefront the failings that we have as a society and the myths that are in place. And I think the Democratic Party has an amazing opportunity to start righting those wrongs right here.
Right, first day.
Let's be honest. Let's be truthful. Mm-hmm. Let's understand where we were and where the hell we need to be.
Exactly.
I'm not sure they'll have the courage to do that, but it would be so powerful for everyone if they did. And I think that's kind of why we're talking about the priorities here.
Well, and here's the thing, Marie, is when Biden takes office, he's going to have majorities in both the House and the Senate. And a lot of shit is going to get done. Mitch McConnell will be gone. Dick Durbin should be the next Speaker of the House, and stuff is going to get done because that man gets stuff done, right? He gets stuff done. And we are not going to have the roadblock that is Mitch McConnell that we've had for the last 10 years in Washington. I mean, all that man has done since the CARES Act is fill the federal courts, and no other work of the Senate has been done. I can't wait until he's gone. I just gave Amy McConnell more money today. So, and if it weren't for a global pandemic, we'd be out there knocking doors for Amy McGrath.
And I agree, but that's something I think the party needs to address as well. Is we need to address systemic reform on every level.
Yeah.
Because this showed us where our inconsistencies are. Where, let's put it this way. There really is no ultimate oversight of a president. There really is no way to stop then enforce what you do. We were based on checks and balances. So I believe that the Democrats need to really focus and use that as a part of it. So with the pandemic response gives us an opportunity to address healthcare as a basic human right. It gives us the opportunity to address what the other platforms we're talking about. Inequality.
Yes,
criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
Workers' rights. So you were so right to say that that's what needed to be addressed first, because all the other building blocks of this platform can be changed and moved through
Congress,
through the COVID response.
Yes,
and we have to understand. I know we can't wait to get rid of Mitch and flip the Senate.
Yeah,
but we have to fundamentally change things,
right?
And we cannot depend on the American people not being bamboozled or politicians doing what's in their best interest. We can't count on the laws that we have or the Department of Justice to enforce those laws.
If anything,
everything we know has been destroyed, and we need to rebuild.
Trump has found that democracy is not a bowl that holds us all. It is a sieve that he can pour things through. And we have settled to the very bottom. There is no bottom. Every time we think there's a bottom with Trump, he finds a deeper place to go. And picking apart our democracy.
And no one has stopped him.
Nobody has stopped him. And I lay that right at the feet of Mitch McConnell and Bill Barr. You and I talked about when Bill Barr...
I agree.
Yeah.
It's their responsibility, but no one in the founding of this experiment ever imagined
because
all the forces would be working against. And so because
democracy.
of that, Democrats need to
codify a whole bunch of... We need to codify a bunch of legislation so this can never happen again. I know that people have talked about the Trump Act that they want to put in to block to plug all the holes in the sieve that he has created out of our democracy. And I think that that's going to be a huge thing. We need to make sure that no one is above the law, and that
The
legal
law is executed equally
equally,
for all,
right?
which comes into criminal justice reform,
right,
which comes into truth in sentencing. There are so many things that are in place that allow Trump, the wealthy, the powerful,
yeah.
to evade that than the poor, than uh, by Black, Indigenous, Brown, and people of color communities.
Well,
There are so many ways that the justice system, from enforcement
mm-hmm.
all the way through adjudicating,
Yes.
are disenfranchising. And we see that now we need to understand. We have to just completely revamp that.
Well, I just read an article about 3 weeks ago about the IRS. The IRS don't go after the super rich for money, for taxes
No,
that
they
owe.
don't. They go after
They
the
go
low-hanging fruit,
because
which is exactly what happened with the mortgage scam.
right.
We had the mortgage, the housing bubble collapse, the greater economic crash,
Yeah.
that we had that Obama recovered us from.
Yeah.
It was the same thing.
Yes.
Mortgages were bundled and sold, and they were commodities, and they were overinflated. And then when it all fell apart,
I know.
companies started going after the low-hanging fruit. Those folks who had smaller dollar homes. The reason is because they could get that with pressure
Mm-hmm.
from the justice system and the banking system, and they could collect a lot more of that. Where if they went for the higher level fish, it's going to take more time, more money, more effort.
Right.
So so those that should have paid the most got away with the least, and those that were preyed upon
Right.
to have loans that they shouldn't have were the ones that suffered the most.
I know.
So we need to make sure that that's something that we take care of.
We have to fix the holes in our criminal justice system, and they've been glaring. We'll just use marijuana right now because now it's legal here in Illinois. But before it was, if you were a brown or black person and you got caught with a joint, you were going to jail. If you were a white kid, you got sent home to mom and dad, and your stuff confiscated. So it's like, I told you, I met some young, a family of young men that lived in Minooka with their mom in a house of the four brothers, and these were mid-20s and down through high teens. Two of them were in jail for pot charges, and two of them had convictions for pot charges. You know what that was doing to their work history, to their work prospects? Because they had convictions. I can't wait till we get more. I know that they were all expunged, when we took care of that here in Illinois. And I remember bringing that story to our governor when he was running for office and saying, look, I have to tell you about these boys that I met, because these are young, brilliant black boys, and they should be out there in college and working and doing. And instead they're stuck living at home with mom and dad or in jail because of pot. For God's sake, so I was so glad he got right on that. But let's talk about one of my favorite things that I want to see in the platform, Murray, the codification of Roe v. Wade. Are you ready for that?
Let's talk about women's rights.
Yes.
That needs to be at the forefront of the platforms. And that includes supporting women, creating a culture that is working toward reducing the rape culture that exists, misogyny, the laws that keep women disenfranchised, the double standards from a cultural perspective, as well as codifying Roe v. Wade, and making sure that the ERA has
ratified.
Yep. Caregiver credit. Those people who are caring for their children or their mothers or their disabled siblings, care credit. All of these legislation and pieces, like we talked about, disenfranchise the average person because it's low-hanging fruit.
They keep women from being equal. And my thing on codifying Roe v. Wade is that this is important legislation. that both parties use to garner votes and raise money. And it's got to stop. Women are not pawns in a political game, in a political misogynist game. Women deserve to have codification of human rights and not be regulated like you regulate pesticides. I'm so tired of this. I don't want to have an abortion, but you know what? Damn it, it's none of my damn business. And we need to make sure that we codify this so neither party can use this as a vote getter or a fundraiser, and that women are not shamed and harmed and whore-madonna'd into submission their entire lives. So, Joe Biden, if you're listening to this, that should be, you should fix the virus and then codify Roe v. Wade. Let's get this done, for God's sake. Women can't be a yo-yo anymore. You're this, you're that. No. You're this, you're that. You're a whore, you're a Madonna. You're a whore, you're a Madonna. I am so sick of that. Stop it. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to my daughter. Don't do that to Murray. Don't do that to my mother. Stop it. Stop it. Codify Roe. So.
And in addition to our virus addressing, women's rights, criminal justice reform, healthcare, this ties in.
Yes.
We have to redefine the healthcare system that enables everyone to have access to it. As we see, what we currently have is not a good thing.
We learned that in New York,
that needs to be a primary principle.
In New York City, if you got COVID-19 and you were at a public hospital that accepted Medicaid, you were 60% more likely to die than if you were in a private hospital that took private insurance. And it was all about staffing ratios. It was about equipment. That's because medical care, health care, is not insurance companies. It is about taking care of people. Healthcare is a human right. Nobody, like myself, when my son was sick, should be forced into near bankruptcy or into bankruptcy because your child is ill. And they should never be shamed for that. Ever. Ever. So,
I couldn't agree more.
Healthcare is a human right. When we have this discussion, we do not invite the insurance companies to the table. They are a for-profit entity, and they offer no healthcare whatsoever. So, yeah. Biden, if you're listening, no insurance companies in the healthcare discussion, period.
So we need to also address voting rights.
Yes.
We need to make sure that is a top part of the platform.
Yeah.
We need voting rights to be guaranteed for all. And again, with this pandemic, it has become, even more apparent than gerrymandering and voter suppression.
Yes.
With the mail-in ballot, banana cake pants, Postmaster General delaying postage, now saying we want to pretend that the election shouldn't happen because we can't do honest voting. Holy shitballs.
I know.
We need to take care of this and take care of it right away. Quickly, right away.
Running the post office should never be a political appointment, period. Okay? We've watched the Republicans monkey around, mostly in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, with voting access forever. Now it's expanded. Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, all doing shit to keep people from voting, usually in urban and poor areas. If the color of your skin isn't lily white, you're not going to get to vote. We've passed laws about this, ladies and gentlemen. This is already settled law. You can't do that. The Voting Rights Act not only should be remade and modernized for today, mail-in ballots should be always happen. Every voter, every registered voter, every person who turns 18 that's a citizen of the United States should be given their voter's registration card and mailed a ballot. There should be no exceptions to this at all. At all. If you're a citizen, you were born here, you get to vote here. That's the law. If you're a naturalized citizen, you get to vote here. When you're naturalized, you get your voter's registration card and you're on the rolls to have your ballot mailed to you. Our military votes by mail all the time. All the time since the time of the Civil War. We can do this. We can do this. We can mail our votes in and it will be safe. So we need to make sure that we have voting access that lets everybody have a voice. Everybody. From the people working in the fields to the people working on Wall Street. So, and then we don't have to
And
worry about people not having time to get out. We saw that in Iowa. If you weren't off work at 7 p.m. in time to go to the caucus, you didn't get to vote. Your voice was not heard. That's wrong. So
we also need to talk about taxes and reviewing our tax laws.
yes,
And making corporations responsible for the percentage of profit that they make
yes,
in paying taxes.
right,
That needs to be something that's in our domestic policy.
yes,
Because we cannot continue to sustain, nor should we sustain, the function of the government on the backs of the individual workers.
right. And
That's what we are doing. We are place a majority of the burden on the individual workers instead of placing that burden on the money makers, because that ties into the silly aspect of trickle-down economics and how, of course, if they make more money, then everyone else will too. We know this does not work. We know this is not effective. We need to address the laws that allow that to occur. We need to redo our tax codes and making it so that corporations who use our streets, who use our employees, who use our citizens, who have been educated by our systems,
yes,
start to pay their
fair share. That's all we're asking. We're not asking for them to pay more. We're just asking them to pay their fair share, Jeff Bezos. Just pay your fair share. And don't sit there and go, but I donated so much money for the homeless. Pay your damn taxes, and we will take care of the homeless. If you paid your taxes, we wouldn't have homeless. But you don't.
And that'll lead us to workers' protections.
Yes.
And universal basic income.
Yes.
Those are some things that are going to become extremely important. And workers' protections need to be codified.
Yes.
Some days, Heidi, my head starts to hurt with how the basic premise of a concept is agreed upon by all, but then twisted and perverted for their own ends.
No kidding.
The free... this is why life sucks. Okay. Anyway, we do need to address it. And if we have corporations paying their fair share,
right,
if we have automation taxes, then we can start to look at a universal basic income. Guaranteeing that people can survive in the world does not mean that they're not going to work, that they're not going to have jobs.
Right.
That's a misconception.
When we met Andrew Yang and we followed his philosophies very closely, and I still listen to his Yang Speaks podcast, which is excellent. When he talked about a UBI, and we're seeing this right now with the Republicans refusing to offer $600 a week to people who are unemployed. And let me tell you what that $600 a week is. That's $15 an hour, which is the recommended minimum wage. Everybody agrees on that unless you live in the deep south and you're, whatever. And times 40 hours is $600 a week. I'm saying if you can't make $600 a week from your job, then the government should make it up with a UBI. And you know what that would happen? People would no longer need food stamps. They wouldn't need Section 8. They wouldn't need a lot of things. They would have a universal basic income that would pay their rent, that would pay for their food, that would pay for their medical care, which would be included in the universal health care plan, which when the millionaires and billionaires pay their fair share, just pay their fair share, we can afford. So, the thing is, Murray, is that we're watching the Republicans go, no, $600 a week, that makes people not work, which is a lie. And, so we know that that's what people need in order just to survive, just to get by. And I think of all my friends that are trying to survive on 2 jobs, each person working in the marriage, and neither one is making $15 an hour, and they can't hardly make ends meet. Can you imagine if they had a universal basic income, at least $600 a week per person? They could afford a car with 4 working tires. Duh. So they would be better consumers. They would be, better parents. They would have more time to spend with their families. They might be able to afford to have children. Just saying.
Right.
I mean, it can't be like Kanye giving $1 million to every child born, Oh, God. So, I'm sorry. Poor
We
Kanye. He's sick.
also, I know. We also need to talk about adjusting how we do campaigns.
Campaign finance reform. Murray, you and I have talked about, unqualified PACs and qualified PACs and all the dark money that exists in both parties, but more predominantly in the Republican Party, rather. We've seen it in the Ousting 8 series we did for getting rid of 8 senators so we can flip the Senate. All the dark money that exists that controls every vote that they make. And until we get rid of these unqualified PACs and super PACs and the things that we do that we allow to happen that control the votes in so many Senate races and so many House races, watching this is how money is how we get this crazy ass president that owes money to the State Bank of China and to Deutsche Bank and to oligarchs in Russia, and that frames how he rules or tweets legislation, because it's not legislation, it's just his rules of the day. So by changing how Citizens United, overturning Citizens United, having clear, concise campaign finance reform allows us, we the people, to have a say in how our government is run.
And we have to look at all of this ties together. And if starting our past with the COVID response, it exposed between Trump's presidency and the pandemic, has exposed every glaring, these all dovetail together.
Yes.
So when we have campaign finance reform, when we have lobbying reform, when politicians become less beholden to those wealthy individuals and corporations, then they can start taking them to task more and getting them to pay their fair share. And then from that, we work on building all the other things. But I do have one more thing that we need to hit domestically before our time is up. And that is we need to also include gun control.
Well, I don't know gun control, but gun safety. As a gun owner, I think that it's really important that we have universal background checks. We see the problems and the holes in how we legislate guns in Chicago streets. Most of those guns we know come up the pipeline from Missouri or Indiana and straight into the city of Chicago, where you can go down, you and I could go down and fill up my pickup truck of AR-15s and bring them up and sell them on the streets of Chicago. We know that that's legal. So we need to make sure that we close those loopholes and the gun show loopholes. That needs to be federal legislation, not state by state, because we've seen how state by state doesn't work with a pandemic. How in the world would it work with gun legislation? We need to keep people safe. A lot of the times when we have problems with mass shootings, and we have not had a school shooting in a while because we haven't had school.
At school, I swear to God, there will be a Trump commercial
about
him ending school shootings.
Oh my God! We haven't had school. We haven't had concert shootings.
Ad saying
we haven't had church
mass shootings in 2020.
Yeah,
because there hasn't been in school.
Nobody can be in gatherings of larger than 10 to 50 people. Of course, there's no mass shootings. You moron. Can
I talk just for a second as we're talking about gun control? Let's talk just real briefly about the NRA and the militias and all those folks who are supposed to be protecting from the tyranny of the government. Wait. Refresh my memory on what the Second Amendment actually says. A well-regulated militia.
Not a bunch of hairy bubbas with semi-automatics. That's not what it says.
So there's a whole bunch of those folks out there who stormed the Michigan Capitol and waved them on the corner of Jackson and Jefferson.
Blended in on the streets of Portland. Blended in, as riot control. Blended in because they have access to the same outfits, the same weaponry, they have the same everything, so they can blend right in. You can be an alt-righty and just blend in.
So that is something that we need to make sure we really
kidding.
There.
No kidding, Marie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for gun rights. Have all the guns you want, but you cannot walk around in military fatigues, packing a semi-automatic, trying to do crowd control when you've not been trained for it. You don't know how any of this works. And if anything, it is a cry for better mental health care in the United States. For God's sake, that's not normal behavior. Not normal. And you know who I'm talking to because we're related. It's not normal. Sorry, one of my nephews watches. Thank you.
Okay. The other thing that is rarely talked about that I would like to bring up here is the Freedom Doctrine.
Oh,
Heidi and I are big fans of this.
Yes.
And this goes back a long, long way. It's the erosion of the honest information given through media sources.
Yeah.
It began and it just kept being more eroded and more eroded and more eroded, and that's why broadcasting networks like Fox News can be labeled news, can use opinion as opposed to fact and be claimed as fact. That's why they do not have to present, they present Dr. Sex Demon hydroxychloroquine swearing. They do not have to also present the other 700,000 doctors who know it's bullshit. So the erosion of that is what really hurt us.
Yes.
As a nation, politically, economically, every way you can imagine. And that is something that we need to address and reinstitute. So Joe Biden, ECCC, DNC, everybody, it's old. Hey, if Trump can bring up the Insurrection Act of I don't know, we can bring up the Freedom Doctrine. All right, let's go ahead and add that into our list.
The Freedom Doctrine is why people are dying, why people are refusing to wear masks, while they're refusing to socially distance themselves. The Freedom Doctrine is why a virus, a global pandemic, can be called a hoax. And
yes,
we are seeing, we're seeing the dire consequences. I'm all for opposing viewpoint, counterpoint. Those are really good things. It's good discussion. But when you have that peddled as the absolute truth, people die. People die.
Without a balancing side. And that was the whole purpose of it.
And democracy is dying because of it. It's dying.
Yes, it is.
So, Marie, we need to...
guys,
we need to talk a little bit about... Do you want to do foreign policy or another day?
I was going to say, let's save foreign policy for a bonus episode.
Okay.
Or perhaps another live. But we do love all of you guys. We have enjoyed talking to you. As we said, domestically, we need to focus on comprehensive pandemic response.
Right.
Women and everything that falls under, codification of Roe v. Wade, the ERA, caregivers, criminal justice reform at every level, workers' rights, tax law, voting rights, gun control, and the Freedom Doctrine.
Oh,
we covered a lot of information.
A lot. And the thing is that until we protect our workers and women, and until we protect ourselves, we cannot move forward as a country. We are stuck in this.
And we need to remember, so many of these issues are interconnected.
They are.
And smart, thoughtful policy would take care of many at one time.
I'm just telling you, Marie, we stop villainizing women and shit gets done.
Amen, sister. Amen.
Yeah. So, because, women are going to look out for your best interest. We don't let people get sick and die if we can help it. We just don't. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching today. I'm going to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. Find all of our previous episodes at Heartland Mamas, MAMAS.com. Look for a bonus episode that we'll shoot right after this on foreign policy and release at a later date. And thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate you. Take care now.
MCAST USA.
Bye.